everyone, welcome back to Inherited Recipes. Today I am excited to show you how to make my grandma's easy homemade brownie recipe. So to start, I'm going to prepare a 8x8 baking dish, and as you can see I'm crunching up the parchment paper and that kind of helps it fit a little better. If it doesn't plop right in there, it's okay. The weight of the brownie batter will hold the parchment in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crack 2 eggs into a large bowl, and then I'm going to mix those guys up. Mixing them real good, just breaking up all the yolk and that kind of thing. And now I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. I exploded the can and I got cocoa powder all over me right there. It was a new can and it must have been vacuum sealed or something. So 3/4 of a cup going into the egg mixture. And now I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Right on in there. And then I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. There's the baking powder. And then I'm going to also add 1/2 teaspoon of instant espresso or instant coffee. And what this does is you're not going to taste the coffee flavor, but the instant powder enhances, kind of makes a richer chocolatey flavor. So it is optional, but I like doing it because I love how it brings out the flavor of the chocolate. And now I'm adding 1 tablespoon of vanilla. And then I'm gonna mix it all up, and it'll be a really thick batter. This whole the batter at the very end also is gonna be a pretty thick batter, but you just kind of want to get everything incorporated. I'm still spilling cocoa powder everywhere. Cocoa powder is definitely it likes to fly away. It poofs up really easily, so just be a little careful. So as you can kind of see, it's not fully coming together, but it's definitely well incorporated. Um, and so after that, I'm gonna set this bowl aside and then I'm going to melt 1/2 stick of butter in a bowl. I think I microwaved it for like 45 seconds. Get all the paper off. Ooh, and then it's not totally melted, but you can take a little spatula and kind of swirl it together, and it helps the rest of the butter melt all the way. And then to the melted butter, I'm going to add 2 cups of sugar. And it's important to do this to add the sugar to the melted butter because the butter will kind of help melt the sugar down a little bit. I have made this recipe before and done this out of order. I just added the butter. I just added everything in one big bowl. But this step is really important because when I did that, it the brownies were like grainy almost because the sugar didn't get a chance to melt in that butter. So I would say this step is pretty important. It's an easy step, but definitely an important one. So just kind of swirl it all together, make sure it's all mixed well and incorporated, and give the sugar a chance to dissolve a little bit. So now that my butter's all mixed, I'm going to add it to the cocoa powder mixture. Giving it a nice mix, and this batter should come together pretty easily. It definitely is a lot thicker than a cake batter, so don't worry if you have a thicker batter. Get it all nice and incorporated. And now I'm going to add in 3/4 of a cup of flour. Gonna mix that all together. And this is where the batter definitely thickens up a little bit. I would say it almost resembles more of a dough. It's still very easily pliable, I guess, but it definitely is way thicker than a cake batter. Yeah, you can kind of see how thick it is in this shot. Now I'm adding the chocolate chips. I'm adding about 3/4 of a cup of chocolate chips, and then I'm going to mix those up well. If you like nuts in your brownies, now would be the time to add them. You could probably add both chocolate chips and nuts, but I would maybe cut back on the amount of chocolate chips. Maybe only do half a cup or a 1/4 cup of chocolate chips and like a 1/4 cup of nuts. That way the batter will still be able to bake. If you have too many of those additives, it will be really hard for the brownies to cook all the way through. But I'm just mixing up those chocolate chips now, getting them as evenly incorporated as I can. And then I'm going to grab my pan and spread these guys in. Oh, yep, plop it goes. And then I'm just going to use my spatula and kind of spread it out a little bit, as even as I can. Once the batter heats up in the oven, it will spread and get even in the oven, but I'm just doing a little bit of that now beforehand. And then I'm going to bake these at 350 degrees for about 30-35 minutes, depending on how hot your oven runs. But then you can check them with a toothpick and enjoy. Make sure you subscribe for more of my inherited recipes.